some of the most quality and sturdy training mitts on the market are the Title V2T gloves. These things will last you an incredibly long time. I've trained on these things substantially for over 1 year. I couldn't recommend another brand that gives you much quality for the same amount of money. On December 9th, 2017, perhaps the most technical and sophisticated showdown in combat sports history will take place between two of the most accomplished amateur boxers to have ever turned pro. I'm your host, King Brimeses Chimera, and welcome to Neutral Corner, where we take fighters from past and present from all prominent combat sports and stack them up against each other in a fictitious head-to-head battle, going by their statistics, accomplishments, and attributes to hypothesize who would be victorious in a fight between two combatants. In order to analyze this matchup, I would need to require advanced knowledge in theoretical quantum physics as well as thermodynamics. But as per usual, we're going to analyze both fighters' amateur careers. Let's start with Guillermo Rigondeaux. Guillermo Rigondeaux has one of the most extensive amateur resumes with 475 wins and 12 losses, and around a dozen gold medals in major tournaments, including 2 successive gold medals in the bantamweight division in the Olympics. Guillermo Rigondeaux has 18 professional fights with 17 wins, 11 knockouts, and 1 no contest. Vasyl Lomachenko is arguably the greatest amateur boxer. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say Lomachenko is arguably the greatest amateur fighter the world has ever seen, possibly even greater than Brimeses Chimera himself. Vasyl Lomachenko won 2 consecutive gold medals in the Olympics as well as other intercontinental championships. With 397 fights as an amateur, he only had 1 loss, where he ended up defeating the only guy to ever beat him twice. Since turning professional, Lomachenko has had 10 fights with 7 KOs and ended up losing a close split 12-round decision against seasoned vet Orlando Salido in only his second bout. Guillermo Rigondeaux stands at 5 feet 4 inches with a 68-inch reach. Rigondeaux is also 36 years old, and by the time of the fight on December 9th, he will be 37. Vasyl Lomachenko is 29 years old and stands at 5 feet 6 inches with a 65-inch reach. Guillermo Rigondeaux is very much like a smaller Pernell Whitaker that packs a bigger punch. Not only is he one of the best counterpunchers in the game, but he is also one of the biggest composite punchers in all of boxing. The majority of all his opponents are bigger fighters, and every single one of his opponents he's managed to hurt. If they're even close to the same size, he was putting them on the ground. In addition to that, he has some of the best hand speed and savviness in all of boxing. As devastating as his offensive game is, he is equally as difficult to hit. Similar to Floyd Mayweather, he can sense things before they happen. He has no problem closing the distance, keeping the distance, or fighting mid-range against any kind of opponent. I was extremely surprised at how well he handled Nonito Donaire, who is the much bigger adversary. He was even knocked down in a fight against Nonito Donaire and took it like a champ, which proved that Rigondeaux can give it as well as he can take it. In the realm of power, Vasyl Lomachenko isn't known to be the hardest puncher whatsoever. This is not saying that he doesn't hit hard. Virtually every boxer does. However, there are some fighters that prefer to focus on power punching but usually tend to trade shots more with their opponents. You also have fighters that counterpunch and don't prefer to trade shots at all. When it comes to the casual viewer, they care much more about brutality and hard punching than sophisticated boxing and movements. And at the very least, constant aggression, which usually isn't the wisest route when it comes to trying to win a fight. Although Lomachenko's pro career is still in its sophomore stage, his movement rivals and even surpasses that of many of the all-time greats. His showmanship is in the same league as Pernell Whitaker and Naseem Hamed. Will he go down as the most prolific showman in the history of the sport? Well, we have yet to see. Vasyl Lomachenko primarily enjoys confusing his opponents by attacking from angles just slightly out of their field of focus. Many different schools of thought have a different name for this method. I typically refer to this method as going from south to east. For those of you who don't know, right-handed fighters are known as orthodox fighters and left-handed fighters are known as southpaws. Therefore, the orthodox fighter is considered to be standing north and the southpaw fighter is standing south. So when these two types of fighters are standing up against one another, it is considered north and south. What Lomachenko does is step outside the orthodox lead foot with his own lead foot, therefore going south to east. This places him almost completely out of the range of his opponent's power hand temporarily until they readjust their position. This method also moves him to the borders of his opponent's peripheral vision. Lomachenko then rotates east to west as his opponents adjust to continually confuse them and land shots from angles. This leaves his opponent not only having a difficult time seeing, but also predicting. I will go deeper into this subject, but that's not necessarily what Neutral Corner is about. But feel free to leave a comment below and hit like if you'd like to have me do breakdowns of more sophisticated styles in the future. The problem with Lomachenko is that this time around, it's much harder to implement the south to east and south to west cross-ups against another southpaw. Similar to how you really see this kind of footwork between two orthodox fighters. As you saw when Lomachenko fought Gary Russell, he fought on a straight line as opposed to cutting angles most of the time. And as you saw, Lomachenko had a little bit more trouble due to Gary's hand speed. The problem with Gary's hand speed is that he slaps his punches instead of putting more pop on them. Rigondeaux, however, is also faster than Lomachenko when it comes to hand speed, and he has tremendous power on his punches. He is also just as excellent at throwing punches from different angles as Lomachenko. Rigondeaux is a great mobile fighter, and he has to be because he normally fights bigger opponents, but at times he could get flat-footed because he wants to showcase his defensive prowess. If Rigondeaux was an orthodox fighter, it would provide Lomachenko the opportunity to cut the angles that he needs. But again, Rigondeaux is a southpaw, and we have no conclusive data on how Lomachenko will react to that kind of defensive movement from Rigondeaux at this moment. There's only so much you can deduce from 10 professional fights. In boxing, I believe that there is no such thing as a toss-up fight. In MMA, for example, if one fighter takes the fight to the ground, he will most definitely win. But if his opponent keeps the fight a stand-up fight, his opponent will win. But this fight between Vasyl Lomachenko and Guillermo Rigondeaux is literally the toughest contest that I've ever had to analyze. Rigondeaux has more and better experience, but he is also the smaller fighter as well as the older. He is approaching 37 years old. No, I'm not one of those people that believes in the myth that fighters are done after their mid-30s. If you look at Bernard Hopkins, he was competing against the best in the middleweight and light heavyweight divisions in the world in his late 40s. Floyd Mayweather Jr. is still the best fighter in the world, and in a league of his own, he was still 38 years old. Roberto Duran beat the much bigger Iron Barkley at the middleweight when he was only 38 years old, and Iron Barkley knocked out Thomas Hearns twice. But regardless, at that age, fighters always have to compensate for the physical changes in their bodies. A drawback from Lomachenko is that he's dealing with somebody that's both more a concussive and faster puncher with a longer reach. He is more experienced but equally as crafty, and has made his entire career out of beating up bigger fighters. So if I was at bantamweight, I would give it to Rigondeaux easy. Rigondeaux's southpaw stance and craftsmanship will make it hard for Lomachenko to implement his usual cross-up techniques, such as the time when he fought Gary Russell. Plus, we haven't seen Lomachenko beat anyone that had the caliber of Nonito Donaire. If Gary Russell had the steam and pop on his punches like Rigondeaux, as well as the defense, it would have resulted in a victory for Russell. I do like Lomachenko's style better than Rigondeaux's style, but if Lomachenko can't lock Rigondeaux in the matrix, I don't see him winning with the size and youth advantage. I believe Rigondeaux could pit him on the ground if they fight toe-to-toe. Rigondeaux has more tools to work with, Because both of these phenomenal athletes are strong-willed and can take a punch, I don't predict a knockout from either party, but I do expect to see some interesting movements between these two that we have yet to see in combat sports. But ultimately, I see Rigondeaux having the upper hand and winning a unanimous decision. Thank you guys very much for watching Neutral Corner episode 8. It will be 8 episodes so far. I'm really happy. Praise to the Most High. Praise to all YouTube fans. So don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share. In the next episode of Neutral Corner, we're going to compare fighters from 2 different generations. I'll see you guys next time.